If I'm following you correctly, you're not emotionally involved with that property like many investors are, so you can make prudent business decisions. Is that correct?
Yes, because typically owners want, again, to get even or teach a lesson. So we could have a situation with either a divorce or some other natural problem happening in a family where a good tenant is now not doing so well. And it's going to come time that maybe we have to ask this tenant to leave. And some owners in this attempt to get even will give the instruction of, I want you to let that guy know what I feel about him. I want you to tell him how it is. I want you to get even with him. I want him out of the property. And I could be foolish enough to relay that message. What I would prefer to do, Gene, is let you know that you've been a wonderful tenant for the amount of time I've known you. I thank you very much for all the effort and time you put into my property. That my owners decided to take this opportunity to retire, maybe relocate to Las Vegas. And that I'm going to send you a list of all the things you need to do to get your security deposit back, because of course, Gene, you would like to get your deposit back. And I'm going to do it that way. I'll see you on the 31st of the month. What else would you want me to tell them? Because if I tell them a story you want, it may be satisfying to you, and you may feel good about yourself, but your house is going to be a mess. And my job is to get back houses that are not a mess.
What's the best way to qualify an applicant?
Best way to qualify an applicant is not to believe anything you hear and anything you see, but only what can be proved. You run into people you probably have heard before that say, I can tell something about you by looking at how you maintain your car, or how you maintain your shoes, or your fingernails. I don't believe any of that. I believe all I have is your credit report and your references, period. That is all I really have. And also that people believe certain things to not be true. But a person with good credit doesn't mean that they are going to be a good tenant. And a person with bad credit doesn't mean they're going to be a bad person. And ideally what you would like is the perfect with perfect credit, because it's much more of a guaranteed. But if you are a bit of what we would call a jerk today, Gene, then moving into my house is not going to change you. And so sometimes it's easier or better to work with somebody who has a few problems with their credit, but substantial security deposits and a very good attitude, than somebody with perfect credit who looks like they're going to be a problem from day one. Because if they're a problem today and we haven't even signed the lease, it is not going to stop. But the difference is now they have possession of my property. And once they have possession, I have to go into say what you have to say, do what you got to do, kiss what bends over, which I can do as a professional. But it's not easy for 12 months or 24 months, especially if you're the owner of the property.
I would automatically think that you would not take someone with terrible credit. Is that true?
Well, let's talk about that a little
Okay.
bit. Let's say if you're an applicant with perfect credit, perfect references, I would like an income of 3 times the rent. So if we're talking $1,000 a month house, I would like you to make 3 times a month rent. That's a wonderful situation. And in that situation, considering they have no pets, I would ask for 1 month in security deposit, $1,000. So it would be the first month's rent of $1,000, the deposit of $1,000, and let's go ahead and take possession of the property. Okay. I also require that if you were moving to Las Vegas, say less than a year, but still had good credit, good references, and income of 3 times the rent, then I may require a little bit more deposit. Okay? Because if you were job transferred, Reynolds Electric to Reynolds Electric, then it's fairly well stable. But if you are new in Las Vegas, the chances are you may or may not like Las Vegas, and Vegas is pretty well known as being a transient type of town. So I may require a deposit, say 1.5 months rent. Now, typically, if you are moving from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, you would figure in your first, last, and security. I'm a little bit cheaper than that, so I really don't see what your problem is. Unless you really don't plan to stay in Las Vegas, or you don't have the money necessary to move to Las Vegas. But a month's rent is going to make you a break, Eugene. I question whether you can afford my house. Okay? Now, you also may be moving to Las Vegas and have a few credit problems. Well, maybe you had a divorce a few years ago and there's a few of those things still hanging around. Then maybe 1.5 or 2 months security deposit is not unreasonable. Okay? And then we also may have a situation where your credit's pretty well bad. Yeah, you had a bankruptcy a couple years ago. Well, if I can verify the reason by credit of why there was a bankruptcy, okay, and maybe it was a medical situation. Your wife had cancer, ran up hundreds of $1,000s worth of medical bills, and you had to go under. And if your credit is verified to be from that point to now is pretty decent, and I have a discharge on the bankruptcy, then if you're willing to give me maybe 2 or 3 months of security, Gene, how does that gentleman look to you now?